Hi, I'm Beth Bonnewell, the Henrico Police Division's Domestic Violence Coordinator. Thanks for joining us on our first ever I'm Asking for a Friend podcast. This podcast features survivors, advocates, and experts having conversations about domestic violence and related matters. From one friend to another, we hope listening will lead to the start of more conversations and safer and healthier relationships. Today, we have Detective Foley with Henrico Police Division's Criminal Investigations Section, that's a mouthful, joining us. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Before we dive into your work, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what led you to your career of wanting to help and protect others?
Yeah, for sure. Well, hi there. My name is Detective Foley, and I'm currently assigned with the division's Special Victims Unit. I've been there for about 2 years now. However, I've been with the division for a little over 6 years. And prior to being a police officer, I did attend VCU, and I graduated with a bachelor's in criminal justice and psychology. And then after college, I just felt like I was being called to a career of serving others and serving the community. So that's what led me here to Henrico.
I also am a double major in psychology and biology.
Oh,
So we
that's
have
so
the
neat.
psychology in common.
Yes.
Yeah. Henrico Police receive several messages, as you know, from citizens. And I wanted to share a recent one with you and our listeners today.
Hi, Henrico Police. I'm asking for a friend, what is stalking? I have a friend who briefly dated someone on and off for a year. This person was verbally and emotionally abusive to my friend. Over the past few months, the person they dated started calling my friend nonstop. They mostly left messages about missing my friend, recounting their dates, and wanting to continue a relationship. There were hundreds of these messages, and my friend has repeatedly asked this person to stop calling and texting them, but they keep reaching out from different numbers. Last night, my friend and I had dinner, and I learned that this person actually showed up without warning at their house last week. The Ring camera video shows them repeatedly knocking on the front door, and they even left my friend flowers on the doorstep with a note that says, "I'm the only person who can ever love you." I guess most people think getting flowers is a sweet gesture, but it's really creeped my friend out to the point that they've been staying at a hotel since this occurred.
So, Detective Foley, what is stalking? And does this sound like a stalking situation to you?
Yeah, so really the definition of stalking is it's a pattern of unwanted or intrusive behaviors directed to a specific person that would cause that person to feel in fear. Like domestic violence, stalking is not just a one-off incident. Stalking is a form of power and control, and it's commonly seen in cases involving domestic violence, although it can consist of many different behaviors and showing a consistent pattern of stalking over the course of time. And so based on this example that this listener sent in, I definitely would say that that sounds like a stalking incident for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's some of that repeated behavior that you were kind of talking about. You know, kind of listening to you, my mind immediately goes to older movies like Fatal Attraction, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Misery, Cape Fear, and also newer shows like Watcher on Netflix, Stalker, and You. Can you help us to understand what is or isn't considered a crime of stalking?
Yeah, I definitely am familiar with some of those shows as well.
Okay.
But truthfully, there isn't just like a catch-all definition or example of what stalking is or isn't.
Hmm.
Stalking consists of many different types of behaviors with the
Hmm.
intent on placing the receiving individual in fear. This can mean something different for every person. For example, like, if somebody placed a rose on my doorstep, to me, that may be odd, but I may not automatically think that somebody is stalking me.
Right.
However, somebody who is experiencing stalking behaviors or domestic violence, if they receive a rose on their front doorstep, that could place them in fear of the individual who has committed violence against them, that they're acting out in this way. It's really individualized to each person. For example, I had a case several years ago where a suspect was repeatedly calling a victim from an unknown number and was making threats over the phone. While the suspect was calling from an unknown number, so we weren't able to trace the phone number, the victim was able to articulate that they, without a doubt, recognized the voice and knew who the person was. And so ultimately, we were able to help that person and were able to place charges on that individual.
Wow, that's a great case example. Thank you for sharing that with us. And a rose, I think, what a sweet gesture, but it could definitely cause somebody to be afraid.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on the context behind, the meaning behind that.
Absolutely. And that's the big thing, is that it's really, what does that symbol mean to you? Again, a rose to me could mean something totally different to you or to another person, or really it can be anything. That's just one example, but it truthfully can be anything. It can be the content within a text. It could be a social media post. It could be, again, these repeated behaviors that we're seeing over time. And so that's really, again, it's very individualized.
You mentioned a social media post. How often is technology used in stalking?
Oh, it's definitely very prevalent for sure. I think that with just the rise in social media and just media in general, it's definitely a common trend to see that plays a huge role in domestic violence and stalking cases.
So I've just mentioned so many movies, and I wonder, do you think these movies kind of romanticize stalking?
I definitely think it can. I mean, if you look at just a lot of different movies and TV series, and I mean, more and more are coming out all the time. And to your point, I definitely think it at times does romanticize kind of what, real life people experience. And while most of us can kind of separate fictional from real life, however, it does have very real implications. And so for individuals who are experiencing domestic violence and stalking, it can definitely, I guess, just even more so heighten, their awareness of the situation, which, is a double-edged sword. Sure, that can definitely be a good thing because we want people to be aware and have the knowledge to make a decision about, if they're in a situation like that. However, it can also kind of put this, fun spin on a situation, and it's a very real crime. It's very real to the people that are experiencing it in real life.
Right. Yeah, that fear. I mean, I feel like it could minimize stalking.
Yeah.
Certainly, for somebody who's trying to survive that situation, and minimize their fear. Oh, it's not so bad because it's being romanticized.
Right.
And then I think on the flip side, maybe it's saying, oh, this is kind of normalizing the behavior for those who are engaging in acts of stalking. I'm sending a message like, this isn't that bad.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
I can see that for sure.
Kind of along the same vein, every so often I hear about somebody famous, being stalked. But in reality, anybody can be a victim of stalking. Can you tell us more about what you see?
I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Anybody can be a victim of stalking. Domestic violence and stalking affects people in every culture, every gender, sexual orientation, age, and socioeconomic group. It does not discriminate.
So teenagers as well as, later life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at any age, you think about high school students and, starting to get into relationships when, they're still in school, all the way through your life. And even until, if you've been married and still are married, it still can have an impact.
Right, right. And, I'm thinking about the message our friend sent to us. If friends are concerned that somebody may be a victim of stalking, what should they do?
I would just encourage them to talk to their friend about their concerns, encourage them to reach out for help, report the incident or incidents to police. We have officers and detectives that work these types of cases, and we're happy to help and answer questions. And we have resources available for people who are experiencing domestic violence and stalking, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help.
Do you think it would be important for somebody who thinks they might be stalked to document instances, and what should they document if you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. We definitely encourage individuals who feel that they're being stalked or have experienced stalking behavior, as soon as you kind of recognize that there's something going on, definitely start documenting it. And you can document it on your phone in a notes app. You can have a physical journal or just anything that you can write down some details about what's going on. It's going to be really important to document the day that it's happening, the time of day, if that's, if you see consistencies that's happening either at night or in the morning.
Pattern. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for that repeated pattern of behavior over time. And that doesn't mean that it's happening exactly at the same time every single day, although it could, but it doesn't have to be. So the important thing is to document the day that it's happening. If you note the time that it's happening, put that down too. What is the behavior that you're seeing? Again, if it's a rose on your doorstep and that is happening repeatedly, then put that down too. And then it's going to be important to articulate, how is that significant? Again, to me, a rose on a doorstep may not mean anything,
Right.
but if there's a specific meaning behind it, or it's symbolic to that relationship or to that person in some way, that's something that we want to know too. And so definitely documenting that would be a great way to go ahead and start documenting those behaviors. And then that's something that we would want to look at.
Okay. And maybe even taking a photograph of that.
Yeah,
Rose,
absolutely.
or- okay.
Photographs, the more
Any
that you're able to show us is better.
Okay. And I imagine, it kind of hit me. You're saying this might not happen every day. So does the stalking behavior sometimes wax and wane? Like it might be heavy for a while, then nothing for a bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Because there can be there's trends of where it can be exactly like you said, where, you're seeing kind of an uptick in the behaviors for a little while. And then there may be a little bit of a cooling off period, and then it may ramp back up again. Again, it's completely different for every individual that's experiencing it. So stalking for one person is not going to look the exact same for another person, but any type of behaviors that you're seeing or experiencing, just make sure you're documenting them, and again, report those to us, and we're happy to help.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's a great idea for how somebody who's concerned, a friend who's concerned, like they could even help the person document.
Yeah,
and keep track
absolutely.
of that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
The county, as you know, has so many resources available, and many of these resources can be found on our Henrico Police Domestic Violence Assistance webpage. Is there any additional guidance or messages you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I would just encourage our listeners or anybody who believes that they're experiencing domestic violence and stalking to not be afraid to reach out and ask for help. We understand that being a victim of domestic violence and stalking can be extremely scary and isolating, but we want to help you and we want to support you through this process. So we just want to encourage you to come forward and let us help you in any way that we can.
Wow, I couldn't have said that any better. Thank you for joining us today, Detective Foley.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to I'm Asking for a Friend. Today, we dove deep into stalking. If you find this content helpful, please let us know. Until next time, remember, you are not alone and help is available.